Howdy my totally tubular gamers, and we are back for another ranking video. Now today's ranking video is going to be on the Danganronpa series. Now I thought for the month of May we would do the month of anime. That's not cringe, I swear. And yeah, I thought we would do the Danganronpa series of games. Now Danganronpa, if you didn't know, is primarily a series of visual novel games, and while visual novels are definitely not really my cup of tea, I will say that there is something different about Danganronpa. It really hit different though. Like, it really is just something else, and Danganronpa has gone on to be potentially the most popular visual novel series that isn't Phoenix Wright. These games just really tell a story that's very different from any other visual novel series, and the games actually do have some gameplay, and the stories are just quite phenomenal all across the board. And I've played all of them, and I've quite enjoyed all of them, and I thought, hey, let's rank them. Let's rank the Danganronpa series. Being that these are very story-based games, there will be zero spoilers in here other than the general premise of each game, and that is it. And with the series as beloved as this, there's obviously going to be some people that disagree, and if you do, you should just tell me in the comments what your favorite games are, and of course, like, share, sub, share, all that stuff. Anyway, out of the 4 Danganronpa games, what do I think is the worst one? Well, I think the worst of the Danganronpa games is the spin-off. Yes, there was a spin-off that came out in between Danganronpa 2 and V3 known as Danganronpa Another Episode Ultra Despair Girls. This game plays very differently from the other Danganronpa games. As you can see, it's not primarily a visual novel, it's actually primarily a third-person shooter with a lot of visual novel elements. Obviously, there's still tons and tons of dialogue that you sit through, and the visual novel aspect is still there. However, the core gameplay is actually this third-person shooter. The story is actually really interesting. The story takes place after the first game, and it stars Kamaru Naegi, who is the younger sister of the first game's protagonist, Makoto, and she has spent the last year locked in an apartment complex in Towa City, unaware of all the shit that is going down in the Danganronpa world. Suddenly she gets attacked by these robots that are Monokuma robots. Monokuma is the primary antagonist of the Danganronpa series, and she's really just trying to get the hell out of the city. Along the way she meets up with Toko, one of the characters from the first game as well, and there's even these kids involved, and I don't really want to go past that. When it comes to the plot, I think it has an interesting premise. However, I actually am not a fan of the story of this game. I really do not like it for a number of different reasons. My biggest problem with the story is actually the characters. Danganronpa usually has really solid, great characters that carry the entire story, but that is not the case in this game. With the exception of Toko, I think all the characters in this game are very annoying, very dull, and just drone on for way too long. Not even the main character Kamaru is exempt from that. There's just so much boring, useless, unneeded bickering that goes on in this game between Kamaru and Toko that I could just do totally without. The main antagonists are not good at all. These kids, no, they're really annoying. I do not like them at all, and not because like they're good villains. I don't like them because they're just that annoying. I think the only time the game becomes relatively interesting is when it actually connects back to the other Danganronpa games, which had much better plots. I don't think this game really stands on its own. It's not very good as part of the series. I just think the plot is very underwhelming and bad. And then don't even get me started on all the rape innuendos and like pedophile. No, that's a no. I don't know why they put that in there. I don't know what they were thinking. That's a no from me, Chief. So unfortunately, the driving force of the game, the story, isn't very good. But how about the gameplay? The gameplay I don't think is very good either. Now keep in mind this was a third-person shooter release for the Vita, so that's sure to spell greatness, right? Well, it really doesn't, actually. Not only does the game look pretty bad, especially on like PS4, but it doesn't play very well either. The shooting is subpar at best, and this game is honestly one of the most boring, benign, bland third-person shooters I've ever played. Not only is the one weapon you get just not very interesting with its alternate firing modes, but the enemies, which are all just Monokuma, are not very interesting either. There's only a few enemy types. You deal with them pretty easy. The game's very easy as a whole. The level design is equally as boring as it's flat. It doesn't do anything interesting. It's very bland. It's generic. It's uninspired. There's really nothing to say about it. Playing as Toko is a little better. It's a bit of a basic hack and slash, but it is rather limited how much you can play as her, which is kind of lame. The game goes on way too long, well over 10 or 11 hours, which is just way too long for a game of this gameplay with such an uninspired, boring story. The game as a whole is quite boring. Even though I do think that this game isn't totally terrible, I don't think it's not really a great game. I don't think it's very good. I think it's average at best and really doesn't even need to be played by Danganronpa fans. I will say the music is pretty good though. The music is pretty nice. That's the best thing about the game, and I don't really recommend it as a whole, but hey, it's not awful. So the next game, the third best game in the Danganronpa series, is the original Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc, which I think is a fantastic game and is significantly better than that last game. This was the one that started it all, and it's just as interesting as the other ones, and it really created the premise for Danganronpa, where it takes place at Hope's Peak Academy, an elite high school for the top of the class. They accept the ultimate students, which is super high school level, highest caliber in various fields of each year. Now, Makoto Naegi, our protagonist, is a very average student. He is selected in a raffle, actually, and chosen to enroll in this academy as the ultimate lucky student. Now, once he gets there, well, something weird happens and he kind of just gets knocked out. He's really confused. He's really excited to be at the school. He meets up with his 14 other ultimate students who are in the same situation as him. However, a sadistic, remote-controlled bear named Monokuma appears, and he basically tells them that they're going to be imprisoned in this academy for the rest of their lives. He says that there's only one way to get out of this school, and that is to murder another student and avoid being identified as the culprit. And if the murderer is found out by the other students, they will be violently executed. And if the class identifies the wrong student as that murderer, everyone will be killed except the murderer. They will be allowed to graduate. It's a pretty dark, messed up plot that sees a lot of high school students with a lot of high school drama, and really it's pretty well warranted in this game as the stakes are high, the drama's high, and it's pretty intense. This is the general plot for the Danganronpa games, and with such an interesting, different plot, there's a reason the game has gained so much praise and just recognition over the years, because it really is very original, it's very different, and the way the plot progresses, I don't think anybody would see that coming. And I really love the characters and the story of this game. All of the characters are exceptionally well done. There's not a single poor character in the game. I think everyone is written incredibly well. The writing in general is just very well done. The voice acting is really top notch, even considering that it's a pretty budget game overall. Just the entire premise, story, progression, characters, I really can't give it enough praise. It is fantastic. I mean, it is a visual novel game, so the story better be amazing to keep me interested, but it really is. It just really is done in such a way that I did not expect it to be done. It's just never been done like this before in a visual novel, at least to my knowledge, and I couldn't get enough of it. When I started playing it, I really just could not put it down, and that's what I can say about the story in general. It's very gripping, and it really doesn't take its foot off the pedal. It's just very well done. When it comes to gameplay, there's two types of gameplay. Both of them are pretty basic. Just the general exploration investigation side, and then the class trials. The exploration side, you can walk around the school in first person. When you go into a room, you just kind of look at it like a picture box, and you can investigate certain objects or areas, especially when a murder is committed, because you will be investigating lots of things. I mean, you have to get as much information and just details as possible, so you'll be investigating literally every single nook and cranny of a room, especially when a murder takes place. After you've done your investigating, you actually do the class trial, where you try to decide who actually killed the other person. And these are always very interesting. These are very well done. They're engaging. They never get old. And the game does throw in a bunch of little mini games to try to keep you more interested in it. And sure, these mini games, I'm not going to say they're very good for the most part, especially Hangman's Gambit, but there are some interesting parts to it. And really, that's the main gameplay of Danganronpa. Not only the first game, but the series is story, investigation of the murder, trial for the murderer, and that's pretty much it. And you know what? It doesn't get old. Every single murder is done in such an interesting way that it's totally different from the last, and I was shocked with how convoluted and just complex some of these murders were, and the investigation even takes a while because there's just so much to unpack here. If they were going to make the games about murders, you know that the murders got to be really complex and really well done, and I can definitely say they are, as it's some of the more unique ones even for the whole series, actually. And the last thing to mention would be, while the graphics are quite basic, they do have a nice little anime art style, and it is alright for the most part. The visual novel stuff is pretty static, but it's alright. But the music, oh man, the music, oh, it's so good, dude. The music in this game is fantastic. It might be my favorite in the whole series. And I just love all the music in this game. If you haven't listened to the music, man, give the music a listen. I've had it playing the whole time in this video. Oh, it's such a banger. But yeah, the first Danganronpa, really solid game. So for the number 2 best Danganronpa game, we have Danganronpa V3, the latest in the Danganronpa series. Danganronpa V3 takes place after Danganronpa 2 and has a very similar premise to all the other Danganronpa games. It starts you out as Kaede Akamatsu, and she is kidnapped and awakens in the Ultimate Academy for Gifted Juveniles. Sounds pretty similar to the first game, and really it's the same as the first game, where you're trapped in this school. The only way to get out is by killing someone and getting away with it, and if they figure out who killed the person, that person dies. I will say that you not only get to play as Kaede, but you actually get to play as another character, Shuichi, and this is interesting because of the game's first couple hours, which take some really big plot twists that not even I saw coming all these games later. The plot does kind of tread on familiar ground a few times, it feels like, in this game. However, it definitely goes off the walls crazy by the end of it, and really just goes absolutely nowhere where the series has gone before, and it's very interesting, and I'll leave it at that. The story is obviously very good. I would say it's arguably the best story in the entire series. Sure, it is a little derivative of the first one, so the second one, but it is definitely a refinement in some aspects, particularly with the pacing, as the murders definitely are spaced out more, as they give more time for the characters to breathe and just be themselves. And I think the characters are actually very strong in this game. I would even argue that a lot of the characters are the strongest characters in the entire series, but you can fight with me that in the comments. It's just very well done, the story as a whole, and all the characters. So with a superb storyline, how about the gameplay? The gameplay is also very well done. It is definitely the most refined of the Danganronpa games. It doesn't feel as clunky as these other games, because it was primarily developed for the PS4, which definitely helped it. So it doesn't feel as clunky, but the gameplay is basically the same as Danganronpa 1 and 2, where you do an investigation, you get to explore around in first person, you're just examining everything, getting all the clues, and then doing the class trials. It's the standard gameplay formula, however it is definitely refined again here a little bit, as it does feel nicer, it controls better, it's a little more obvious what you need to be looking for, and the class trials might be the most complex trials of the whole series. They actually introduced lying as a mechanic to try to find a liar, which is pretty interesting. The cases presented are some of the most complex cases in the entire series, and I think that all of them are really well done. They're all really well done, all the characters are great, the writing is still superb, the music, another banger, the graphics are definitely improved, there is definitely a higher budget with this game as a whole, and you really can't go wrong with it. It's a very solid entry in the series, and unfortunately it's the last game we have as of this video, and I hope we get more, but yeah, we'll see about that. But I have zero problem recommending the game. And what do I think is the best Danganronpa game? It's Danganronpa 2. I think Danganronpa 2 is the best of the Danganronpa games. I think it's the pinnacle of the series, and I think it's arguably the best visual novel game ever created. And let me tell you why. You play as Hajime, an amnesiac boy who just became one of Hope's Peak Academy's ultimate students alongside 15 others. Now, the students find themselves on this remote tropical Jabberwock island with their alleged teacher, which is like this weird mascot rabbit thing named Usami, who claims this is just a simple field trip for all the students. However, after some brief introductions and a little bit of time, turns out the school's notorious principal, Monokuma, is here as well, and the killing game begins once again. Only this time you're all trapped on a remote island instead of a school. While that is the initial premise of the game, I gotta say the story takes a lot of twists and turns that I did not see coming. The story is much grander than that initial premise, and things are very big in terms of the scale and the stakes. I think the story is just a little bit better than the third game, which I thought was better than the first game. And for that, I think it's arguably one of the greatest stories ever told in a video game. Really just one of the best ones in any medium. I thought the story was just fantastic. I thought the way it progressed was fantastic. The setup was great. Like, the setup was really good, obviously, in the other Danganronpa games. But this one with the island, oh, I love it, man. I think it has the best characters in all the Danganronpa games. I think that they're the strongest. They have the best personalities and the best writing. I think some of the standout characters of the entire franchise are in this game, like Nagito. And when it comes to the murders, I think it's the same situation where it is the best of any of the murders in any of the games. I think they're all extremely well done. They're all very interesting. They're very different from any of the other murders in really the whole series. And I was just like, damn, these are really well done. The writing, it's still superb. The voice acting is just as superb. Graphics are also very basic. The gameplay is pretty much the same. And that music, oh, the music is just such a banger. I love every freaking track in this game. All the music is so good. Like, all the music in all three games is good. But the music in this game is phenomenal. Truly great. The pacing of the game is also particularly well done, as you actually unlock new areas as the game progresses, meaning that there's murders and investigations in new areas, which is really cool, and it really keeps the game going, which is something that the first and third game do as well, but this game just does it to a whole different level, and it just really makes the overall like progression of the game feel great. And like I said, the gameplay is pretty much the same as the previous games, as you are just investigating and walking around areas. However, you do get to walk around this cool world map, which is pretty neat, and the investigations are also really well done. And then there's the class trials. The class trials are still very nice. They're very engaging. They're very thoughtful. Some of them get really long, like well over an hour or two, that's just a lot, but I honestly loved all of it. I really didn't want the game to end. I thought it was just such a great story. By the time I was done with it, I was just like, damn, that really was something else. Like, that really was just a trip. Like, it really was an experience. And I think it's something that everybody should try, regardless if you like visual novels or anime or really video games. I have no problem saying that this is one of the most underrated games and just the underrated series that I've ever seen in games. Like, it is still pretty underground, all things considered, and it is pretty niche, but it definitely has gotten some recognition over the years. It's definitely gotten some really positive reception, and I think it's beyond well warranted, as the series as a whole is just excellent. It is the best visual novel series of them all, in my opinion, and I think every visual novel game should be stacked up against Danganronpa because it's just that good. And I mean, it won't obviously be for everyone. Some people want a ton of gameplay or action in their games, and that's not this series. It's a bit of a slow burn. It's a very narrative driven game with lots of characters and a bit of puzzles as well. So if you don't like puzzles, that might not be the best series, but overall I think it's worth trying for everybody. What a stellar series, what a stellar game. And again, no problem recommending all of the games to everyone to try out. So I implore you, check the game out. I've been sucking the game series off for the last 20 minutes or so, with good reason. It's really good. It's just a superb experience, and I remember when I played through all three of these games, I really couldn't put them down. And I don't even really like anime or visual novel series, but here we are. I just really love the game. All of them, except Ultra Despair Girls. So yeah, check it out. That's the end of this video. If you guys got any more anime game series you think I should look at that are not Persona, you should let me know in the comments, but I doubt anybody made it this far. But if you did, have a great one. Type in bricks in the comments and then we'll know. It'll be our little secret, you know. Have a good one, whatever you're going to celebrate. See you later.